Hello, everyone. This is Catherine here from the product marketing team at AHA. Welcome to today's live tutorial on how you should report on progress. And now we can introduce our speakers for today. So, first up, we have Nathaniel Collum, who is our group manager of product management here at AHA. Nathaniel is responsible for reporting on our roadmap progress, so this makes him the perfect person to shed some light on this complex topic. And then joining Nathaniel is Chris Quigley, our product concierge manager. Chris works with many of our largest customers, and he is an expert in reporting. So he will be guiding us through the demo today. So just to close it out, I wanted to reassure everyone that today we'll be covering both the foundations of reporting and AHA roadmaps, but also some expert tips too. So we designed this tutorial so that everyone takes something away from today, whether you are just starting out or are already super familiar with reporting. So with that, let's dive in. Over to you, Nathaniel.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Hi, everyone, and welcome. We all know that product work is never simple. It's full of trade offs, surprises, and decisions that can't always be predicted. And yet, when we report on that work, it often gets reduced to a single status update. Think about that. It's just one line, right? One line to summarize weeks of strategy, debate, and impact. One line you probably rewrote 3 times before hitting send. One line that somehow has to explain everything you've worked on, and that really never does the work justice. And so your roadmap is supposed to carry that story. It's the artifact that captures the decisions, the context, and the trade-offs behind what you're doing. It is the anchor for your team and your stakeholders. It's the resource they use to figure out what's going on. And most teams feel that tension when it comes time to report on progress and impact. And so I have a question for you all. What is your biggest reporting challenge, right? Is it keeping priorities visible over time? Is it showing the real impact of work? Maybe making reports understandable for leadership, or even rolling up that across your teams and initiatives. And I think depending on who you ask at AHA and a lot of the customers that we work with, that we have a mixture of those challenges ourselves, and we see that fairly often. And as I look at some of the responses, it seems almost very evenly split across the board, with maybe a little bit more weight in the sort of showing impact, or, of course, making the reports understandable for leadership. And these challenges come up all the time. A leader asks why one initiative moved forward and maybe another one didn't. A team needs to confirm whether a milestone is still on track. A new risk shows up mid-quarter, and now timelines are shifting. And so a clear, connected report and roadmap helps you answer those questions, and helps you keep the team updated in those moments. And so it shows the reasoning behind your decisions. It tracks progress and context, and it ties results back to value. And so today we'll look at how to turn your roadmap into that story, a clear record of progress and impact that everyone can follow. And I'll hand it over to Chris to walk you through the agenda.
Thanks, Nathaniel. So today we're going to walk through practical ways to make your reporting meaningful so you can back up the decisions, show real progress, and highlight the team's impact. So here's what we'll cover in today's session. So first, we'll set up a feature prioritization view that helps you to make and reinforce key decisions. Next, we'll dive into detailed roadmaps with dependencies, so it's easy to see how work is connected. Then we'll look at goals and initiative reports that highlight progress at a higher level and show how work rolls up to strategy. And finally, we'll build a dashboard for quarterly business reviews so you can communicate progress and impact in one clear, shareable place. So just a quick reminder as we go through, please, again, feel free to submit questions to the Q&A. We've got a lot of folks in there ready to respond, and we'll cover a few questions at the end live. And remember, if you do get lost at any point as we go through as well, or you want to revisit a section later, the recording will be available after the session. But back to you to get us kicked off, Nathaniel.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So, before we talk about progress, we need to start with priorities. This is where most product decisions get made and where alignment is either set early or it starts to drift. And the prioritization view helps teams decide what matters most and agree on it while the trade offs are still clear. It is not just for planning. You can come back to it throughout the year to show how work is tracking against those priorities and to explain what changed when plans shift. So at AHA, we create a prioritization view for every product at the start of the half, and we revisit it regularly. It gives us a shared reference at any time someone asks why something moved or why a new item took priority. The goal is to use it as or to use the prioritization view as decision support, not just a ranked list. So we do consistent scoring and uh, uh, basically demonstrate the visible trade-offs so that you can show your work. And when a priority is questioned, you can point to the criteria and the trade-offs that drove that call. So Chris, let's take a look.
Great, let's dive in. So, just to kind of set the stage for this demo, I'll be acting as a product manager for the fictitious company Fredwin Fredwin Technologies, and specifically for the product Fredwin Cycling. And so you can see that we have a multi-tiered hierarchy here. Now, what you're seeing here is a feature prioritization view, and you can find this under the Features tab. But we do also offer prioritization views for other record types. So you can actually convert this to an epics prioritization view. We offer an ideas prioritization view, which you can find under the ideas menu. And if you come over to strategy and then initiatives, you'll actually notice that you can also access an initiative prioritization view from here. Now, the approach that we're going to walk through for features, it applies to all of these. Now, to start, I want to show just quickly how we created this view. So we have our unranked features over on the left-hand side, and we actually used a filter to narrow the scope to a specific initiative. In the center of the view, we have our prioritized features, and these are organized by the product value scorecard, but also following some internal discussions with other teams like engineering, design, customer success, marketing. We really want to get everybody's input as we go into these discussions. The first thing I want to highlight is this priority line down here. So this is really critical. It represents how much work we can realistically commit to in this time period. Everything above the line fits within the team's capacity. Everything below it forces a trade-off. And this is really where prioritization stops being theoretical and starts reflecting real constraints. Now, this is, you might be thinking, quite a simple view for capacity, and you're right. And there are other more advanced capacity features available in AHA roadmaps. Sadly, we won't have time to go through them today. But if you do have any specific questions on capacity planning, please drop them in the chat and we'll be happy to help you out. But let's talk about this product value scorecard a little bit more. So this score gives teams a structured way to evaluate value instead of relying on gut instinct alone. And in this view, you can see the overall score. But if I expand this panel, you can also see the individual metrics that we're measuring that drive this overall score. And you'll notice that we can interact with this. It's not a one-time thing. As things progress, you naturally learn more and your score should evolve as well. For example, maybe for this top athlete analytics feature, we actually learned that it's going to take a lot more effort. So we can actually adjust the score, raising the effort from 4 to 7, changing our confidence to 100%. And you'll actually notice that the product value score was updating in real time automatically as we did that. And from here, we can determine whether that new information changes the overall priority order and whether something needs to move above or below that priority line based on the extra effort this feature will now take. But for this instance, we're going to keep things as it is. But let's look at a different scenario where maybe leadership comes to us with a new question. We have a bunch of features left in the unranked section on the left that also deliver the initiative that we're focused on. And we might want to decide, can we fit this in? And so I can actually bring these features over into the view and evaluate their potential value against what we're already committed to and really have a grounded discussion about whether they belong in the plan. So you'll notice this virtual bike fitting feature, it has a comparable value to this compare riding patterns feature. And if I bring that over into the view just above it, you'll actually notice that compare riding patterns has now been deprioritized. So you can see how these prioritization views can be an effective tool in your leadership conversations as well. They really give you a shared and objective way to evaluate options, explain constraints, and show how changes are being handled thoughtfully, not reactively. Back to you, Nathaniel.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So, like I mentioned earlier, we come back to prioritization views often because they give us a shared understanding of what matters most. So, once those priorities are set, the next question is sequence. Why is this happening first? Why is that coming later? This is where roadmaps and dependencies start to do real work. So, the roadmap shows how priorities play out over time, and dependencies show what is connected, what has to come first, and what should break if something is moved. Or I'm sorry, what would break if something is moved? We shouldn't try to intentionally break things. By this point, the decisions are already made. The roadmap becomes the artifact you would use to explain the work that you have planned, and you've probably heard this before. Then the inevitable question becomes, can this be done earlier, right? And so sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes it's no, because moving it would put other work at risk. When dependencies are visible and you can show that clearly, you're not just saying no, you're showing what would be impacted by the decision to try to fit something in or to introduce some new item. And so when people can see those relationships, the plan just makes more sense. They can see how everything fits together and why the decisions are made. And that means fewer surprises, less rework, and better alignment as things change. So, with that context, Chris, let's take a look at this in a timeline view.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathaniel. So now we're actually going to go over to a strategy roadmap. And using this view switcher over here, you can actually transition directly into that view as well as several others, which we'll touch on here in a moment. And this is really handy as it allows me to now, as Nathaniel highlighted, view the same data, but on a timeline view. And so just to give you some context here, this bar at the top, this represents that larger initiative that we were focused on. And then within that, we have the individual features that we were prioritizing previously, but now on this timeline. So this displays the sequence of work we've already committed to, and we're ready to now continue with our planning process. So one thing I want to highlight immediately is the ability to show progress on this view. So if you come into this gear icon up at the top and come into this customize view option, you'll actually see that I currently am hiding the progress. But if I uncheck this, now we can visually see shading within the bars to represent the progress on our features and initiatives. And I also on the left-hand side can see the individual progress metrics. And this really makes it easy to answer a very common question, not just what is planned, but how is it actually going? You might also notice these arrows that are joined across our records, and these are dependency lines. And at the bottom, we're also showing dependencies that are outside of the plan for this specific initiative. There may be in other workspaces or directly for other initiatives. And this really allows us to see the full picture of everything that's going on. Right now, all our dependencies are resolved, and that's intentional. We wouldn't want to commit to a plan with conflicting dependencies. But let's say a new request comes in. Leadership wants to squeeze in another feature, and we want to test the impact, but not make any updates until we're really happy to apply that change. To do this, I can actually edit the planning scenario. And this is a way where we can experiment with the changes without actually updating the data until we're ready to commit. And so if I click this view menu at the top, once my report is saved, you'll notice I have the ability to edit the scenario. And so let's do that. And now you'll notice I'm in the scenario. I'm almost in this planning mode where I can make changes directly to the view without actually kind of storing those. So let's go ahead and add that additional feature that we've been talking about and see what impact it now has on our plans. So I added that, and immediately you can see that we hit a dependency risk, which we now need to discuss. And this is powerful because it really shifts the conversation. Instead of debating opinions, we quickly point to the dependency and can explain the impact on our delivery. Now, to resolve this risk, I could simply push out the dates. Then we can kind of review those changes and choose which ones we want to apply here. In this case, I'm not going to move forward with those changes. I'm going to discard those, and we can choose to exit the planning scenario. Now, this timeline view, it's not the only way to visualize our dependencies. Many teams also use pivot reports to take a step back and analyze relationships across your work. So I'll open this example pivot report here. And in this one, we're looking at our features and the dependencies they have with other features. So we're really looking at them in a structured way. And this is especially useful when you want to scan for risk. Now, I'll show you how we constructed this report by coming into the edit data screen here. And you'll see that we chose features as our primary record to build the report around. So all the data, all the filters is directly driven off of this. We then asked for the feature record links, which allows me to select which linked record I want to tie into and see the relationships for. So we chose linked features. We could have just as easily chose linked initiatives, ideas, whatever made sense for the exercise that we're performing here. And then directly within the pivot, we're showing name, status, end date for our primary features. In the cells, we have details related to the linked features that we want to view the relationships of. And that's where this feature record link comes into play in the column. It's going to organize as we see those linked features by those relationships. All right. Now, let's say that we want to add some additional color to this view and improve it aesthetically. Again, I can open this gear icon here, but this time come into customize style. And there's a bunch of options within here. I just want to really focus on kind of coloring and making it more aesthetically pleasing. So I'm going to choose the blue background, and then let's choose to look at or color our data set by the linked feature status. So you'll see there's a lot of different options that we could choose from here. But I like the idea of doing it by linked feature status, because this really helps to make it easy to spot items that haven't started yet, or that are already in progress or completed. Now, finally, with this view, let's bring AI into the picture. So from here, I can access the AI assistant, which now is named L, to summarize the data in this table. So let's make that request. So this is a simple request, but you can really try asking L anything like calling out potential risks or what to consider before adding new work to the plan. And this is helpful because it allows you to sanity check decisions and prepare for stakeholder conversations without having to manually analyze everything. And so already you can see that L is starting to analyze the data. Depending on the request that you make, it can take different amounts of time, but already you can see that she's providing helpful results and guidance. And we can now use its help to kind of move to the next steps and ask for further help. And it'll actually even make suggestions for us. So the big takeaway from the views in this section is that once your plans are set, these views help to explain and defend them. You can show how work is connected, where constraints exist, and what needs to change if your priorities do shift.
Great walkthrough, Chris. Once the priorities are clear and the plan is in motion, the next question is really impact, not just what did you ship, but how did that work connect to the company's strategy? And so that only works when your data is connected. You need to show progress from the individual features all the way up to the strategic goal, right? It's great that we ship this new functionality. Why does it matter? Right. And so this is where the roll-ups can be really helpful. They're critical actually. So they summarize the progress in a way that leadership understands while still letting you trace the numbers back to the work behind them. And instead of just listing what the team shipped, you can show what changed and why it matters.
Yeah, that's really right, Nathaniel. And let's walk through it now to kind of show how that works. So first, I'm going to open an initiative. In this case, it's specifically for Fredwin cycling. And here, if I scroll down, you'll actually notice that the initiative is being fed by a large number of features. And I want to highlight that because you'll actually notice over here that we're automatically calculating our progress based on those child features. And if I just expand this, I can highlight that that's not the only option in terms of how to calculate progress. There are many. And you can actually customize these and set defaults within your workspace settings or your workspace template if you're an Enterprise Plus customer to ensure that you don't have to set these manually each time that you're creating a new record. What I really want to highlight to support what Nathaniel was talking to there is this roll up to workspace line initiative field. And so if I click this, it will actually take me to the initiative that is one layer up in our workspace hierarchy. So this is our product line level initiative. And this making these connections to strategy across your workspace hierarchy really helps your leadership to see how product work across teams supports your overall strategy. And we can continue to go up. You'll notice again from this level, I can then go up to our company level of strategy. And the key thing to notice is that this is the same data, just viewed at different levels. So we followed these links initiative by initiative, and this really helps to set the foundation for a helpful report, which we'll look at here in a moment. But note that you can also do this for goals as well. So I'm going to show you how we can build reports for initiatives and goals and how they come together within a single dashboard in our next section. But for now, let's look at one of my favorite ways to report on rolled up progress, which is another type of pivot report. So this pivot report is really bringing everything together across our products, software initiatives, and then also our company initiatives. So across the top, this is listing our products. So we've broken them up into individual columns here. And then under each one are the product level initiatives owned by those teams. And we can see a progress bar is nested within each one of those. And again, that is being calculated automatically by those features underneath. Now, using this view, we can see how each product's initiatives roll up to those Fredwin software product line initiatives. So this shows in one place how multiple teams are contributing to the same shared outcome and whether that effort is also on track. And then one level higher, we can see how these software initiatives roll up to the company level initiatives at Fredwin Technologies. So this is the connection leadership usually cares the most about. You're not just showing activity, you're showing how product work supports company strategy. And that makes this report especially useful in that it works at multiple levels. A product leader can scan this and see how their team is doing, like how are we progressing? A portfolio leader can see where progress is perhaps uneven, and ELT can quickly understand which strategic initiatives are gaining momentum and maybe which ones need a little more attention. And because this is a pivot, we can add filters and also regroup this view in different ways. For example, maybe I want to focus in just on a specific product. And so I could use the workspace name filter to really restrict what we see here. Or maybe we want to use an initiative filter to narrow the scope of the initiatives at a higher level that we're focused on. A few other things I want to highlight from this view, coming back to that view switcher that we highlighted before, there are other views that we can quickly transition to. A couple really popular ones are, say, the custom roadmap. So maybe you really like that pivot, but you need to communicate the plan once again on a timeline, but show those multiple layers of strategy or even multiple layers of features or other records in AHA. The custom roadmap is really great for allowing you to do that. Equally, I can shift into a list report. So if anyone is a big fan of a spreadsheet, this is the closest to that within AHA. It's a nice, simple view of your data. Also really great for performing activities like bulk edits, maybe across a large amount of data. But one of the big tips I wanted to highlight from here is how you can adjust the names of these columns here. So you'll notice we're currently calling our company initiatives Fredwin Technology Initiatives. Let's simplify and just call those company initiatives. And then to show you how all these views are still interrelated, when I do switch that back to a pivot, you can see that that change carries over. And the saves that you make are also going to carry through. So the big takeaway here is that really everything is connected, but only if you set it up that way. When strategy and work are tracked consistently in one place using shared standards, you can summarize progress without really losing traceability. If each team tracks strategy differently, you end up with missing data and views that are really hard to interpret. And when everything follows the same structure, you can quickly explain why an initiative is ahead or behind and drill straight back into the underlying work without building a brand new report. And this is how you move from defending status updates to confidently showing impact. Back to you, Nathaniel.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's absolutely right. Now let's talk about dashboards. So this is where all these views come together. They're especially useful for recurring internal reviews like quarterly business reviews because they give stakeholders a consistent place to check progress at any time, right? So here's a single resource. Anyone on our team can go and check it out. And with a reliable dashboard, leaders can look at it ahead of the review, come in prepared, and then spend the meeting talking about decisions instead of trying to piece together what the status actually is, trying to understand the report in the first place. And so over time, having a standard dashboard, having standardized reporting will build trust because it's consistent. And so when that structure stays the same, each time that you do a review, people know where to look, what changed, and what needs attention. And so the dashboard becomes that shared resource for progress and risk and impact throughout the quarter, not just during the QBR.
Yeah, that's really right. And with that, let's dive into one of my favorite areas of reporting, which is dashboards. And so this is an example dashboard that we're using for quarterly business review processes. And you'll actually notice at the moment there's a panel missing, and that's intentional. We're going to start by showing you how you can build out these dashboards. So if I click Add Panel here, I really want to highlight that you're not starting from scratch. You can use example panels as is, use them as a starting point to build out from as well. And of course, you also have all of your saved reports throughout AHA that you can also pull into this dashboard. Now, for this example, I'm going to add that feature prioritization view that we were working with before. So let's locate that example view. Quickly want to highlight this copy option as well. if you have this checked, it's going to create a copy of that so that it's disconnected from your current save view. So if you make changes and save them, they'll operate independently. But I want these to remain in sync, so I'm going to uncheck that. And as I've done so, now my prioritization view is down here at the bottom, and I can drag, drop this where I want it, and also resize it so it's looking nice and pretty on our dashboard here. And you'll notice there are a few different types of reports that we've added as panels here. And so, first of all, we have a text panel. And this is including a short business summary for Fredman Cycling. So this sets context right away, where the product stands this quarter, what changed since last review, and really what to pay attention to. It stays visible throughout the conversation, so people really know what they're looking at. We just added that prioritization list, which is now handy when questions come up about those trade-off discussions. And then finally, we've added views around goal status, keeping an eye on our initiative progress. And then down here, we've got a nice ideas activity panel. I did want to note, you might have missed it when I opened the panel previously, you can now also add whiteboards. So if any of you are currently building your whiteboards out within AHA, maybe centrally within the knowledge area in AHA, you can now add them here also, which is super powerful. Another important thing to call out is filtering. So just like we saw before in other reports, you can add the filters that you need, and you can add them to the dashboard to really refine it and highlight or drill into things around specific products, specific teams, timeframes. One big tip I will share though is if you do want to use a filter across all of these panels, make sure that you add the filter to each individual view that is feeding into this. That's just going to make sure that it works consistently. And these types of filters, they're especially useful for processes like quarterly reviews, where each team is expected to show progress using a consistent set of reports, just filtered to their own independent product area. Again, the big benefit here is consistency. Every team can use the same dashboard structure and reports, apply their own filters, and show progress in a comparable way without rebuilding anything for each quarterly review. And when it comes to sharing, if your leadership or other stakeholders are not in AHA, that's not a problem either. You can share this dashboard as a web page. So you can open this share option and manage as a web page. And through here, you can see first how you can generate that web page link, also control the filters and what level of detail the users interacting with the secure web page link can drill into. And if I open this in a new window, you can see what that experience is going to look like. So what's really nice is everything stays up to date automatically. You just share the link and they always see the latest information. So instead of preparing slides for every QBR, you're really sharing a live view of strategy, progress, and priorities all in one place. Now, we just covered a ton from putting together a prioritization view, creating a strategic roadmap and pivot table to visualize dependencies in different ways. Another pivot displaying how work rolls up to your company level strategy. And then finally, this dashboard where we brought it all together. And so I hope this really helps to inspire you to build reports that capture the full scope of your product work. But we have a few moments for Q&A. So let me pass back to Catherine.
Yes, thank you, Chris and Nathaniel. That was great. You covered so much in a little over 30 minutes. That was incredible. So we do have a few minutes for Q&A, and there were a lot of great questions that we received. So I want to pitch a few to you all that I think will be beneficial for our audience. So we received a lot of questions about the prioritization view, which is great. So maybe, Chris, if you're able to navigate back to that, first question is for Nathaniel for AHA. How often do we review our own prioritization view? Kind of any other insights, tidbits you could share on that?
That's a great question. So the prioritization view for us, at least for our own internal processes is the source of truth. It is it's the flat list of what is most important per product. And so we are reviewing it every week when we review the priorities for each product as a leadership team. That's what we do. We're reviewing it every week there, and as you might imagine, priority shift, things come up, and so we have a bunch of automations in place to make sure features are appropriately tagged, so that as new things come up, you can see on this left hand side that Chris is showing. This is where you can pull things into the prioritization view, and so we have a bunch of automations and tags set up so that as we identify new things that we should work on, those will appear on the left-hand side, and I'm able to kind of quickly move things in here. And it's also a really good tool so that as I'm trying to support a customer or working with our customer success team, we're trying to decide, is this something we should work on? Or even if we're discussing it as a leadership team, this is the perfect view to see, okay, we want to pull something in. Is it more important than number 9? Should it go below number 9? Should it be number 20? Should it even be on the page? Should it be in the second page? Should it be something we get to? And so it's a great tool for us, because here you don't really have to think about dates until you agree on the priority. So yeah,
Mhm.
hope that helps.
Thank you. And then, Chris, there were a few questions about how to really personalize this view. If you could quickly show the ability to add columns is great. Yes, easy to just
Yeah.
add those columns there. If you could quickly also show the how you got that priority limit line and then maybe close out with just the metrics that we use for the product value score, that'd be great.
Yeah, wonderful. Happy to. So, we've got a very simple scenario here where we're just using one priority line. Often that's not the case. I work with a lot of teams where they might have several. So one line, which is everything above this, is what we're definitely doing. Everything below that line is we might do, and then there might even be a line which is we're not doing this in the next planning cycle. And so to add these different lines, it's nice and easy. You can just quickly add those. And then you can rename them as well, just by highlighting and typing what you need. In terms of the metrics that are feeding our product value scorecard, we have an article which goes into all the details. But there's common things that you might expect around the one I highlighted during the demo around how much effort does it take? Does it align with our strategy? What is the overall need, and then population as well. The one that I'm often eager to point out though is confidence. So how confident are we in the scoring exercise that we've done? We might be early in our process. We might not have broken it down yet and have a good indication of what the true effort is. And so we might start at like a lower confidence level, and that's really gonna adjust the score as well and help to inform the decisions that we make.
Awesome, thank you. Moving back to Nathaniel, just at a higher level, curious to get your thoughts on how progress reporting changes when you're presenting to an executive team versus your own product team.
Oh, that's a great question. So I always think about context, right? So the team that's building the features, they have all the context. And so if I'm working with that group, the people who know the features, who know the work, then we can get into the weeds about how much progress we've actually made and where we might need to adjust either scope or other work in order to make things happen. The higher you elevate that progress report, the more context that leader needs. And so then you have to ask yourself, to what extent does it make sense to catch them up, right? And in many cases, if you're dealing with a big portfolio, if you have lots of things to share, the level of detail that is needed is really minimal, right? I think if you're wired like I am, the typically you go, okay, here's the progress, and you spend a little bit of time on that, and then here are the problems. And so my only encouragement would say, celebrate your wins as well. When you talk about progress, it's not just about here's where we are in the plan. I would also take time to brag about your product team. Like, here is what we've delivered, right? And here's why it's great. and here's where we need some help from you as leaders to figure out how to move forward. Um, Take advantage of their strategic position in the organization and how they can help you drive the results that you're trying to drive. And that's typically how I think about the level of detail that's needed.
Awesome. Thanks. That's super helpful. Back to you, Chris. For teams that maybe are feeling like reporting is taking a lot of manual effort, are there any opportunities to automate or simplify reporting when it comes to AHA?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that we already spoke to today, which I think we can circle back to. First of all, in terms of using L, the AI assistant, it's available throughout AHA and also really helpful for generating reports, particularly list reports, which might be your starting point. Tell L what you're looking to build, and it can the more information you give it, the better the outputs will be. You can then convert those inputs into those other formats that we looked through, like custom roadmap, pivots, maybe even charts. And tying into that this visualize records in option, because it's not just jumping into different report types, it's actually linking the data between those reports as well. So you can use this to actually display all those linked views as tabs. So they're actually much quicker to jump between and pull together. And one final thing to highlight as well, which can not just save you time day to day, but your broader users within AHA, is default views. So within your workspace settings, you can set up default reports that you want to load when your teams first go to a particular view. So maybe they're going to go to that feature prioritization view. We have a certain default prioritization view that we want to kick off with. And so they can start from there and then build out as needed. So that really helps with first consistency once again, but can also be a big time saver.
For sure. Thank you, Chris. We are just about at time, so we will wrap up Q&A. But before we leave, I did want to make one quick announcement. Hopefully, you may have seen we recently launched a brand new product, AHA Builder. So you can use AHA Builder to rapidly build internal applications with AI. We're super excited about it. We really see this as the future of product management. So there are a few different ways that you can learn about it, as you can see here. One great one is that if you want to see how it works, our co-founder Brian DeHoff will be presenting a demo on March 12th. I am going to add a link right now to the chat where you can register for that. We're also recruiting folks for our early access program, so a link is included there as well. So please definitely check it out. Super exciting. So thank you everyone for joining today. Hopefully you learned a lot more about reporting. Thank you so much for spending some time of your day with us. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.